viewers of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador. This is From the South, and I'm Camila Escalante. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has concluded a visit to Russia, where he and President Putin agreed on a strategic plan for cooperation. At their meeting in Kremlin, President Putin reaffirmed Russia's commitment to carry on fulfilling the military technical agreements which were signed years ago with Venezuela. And he also assured President Maduro of Russia's support for the legitimate Venezuelan government and its dialogue with the opposition.
And of course, we are actively cooperating in the international arena. You know that Russia consistently supports all legitimate authorities, including the Institute of the Venezuelan President and that of the Parliament. And of course, we support the dialogue that you, Mr. President, your government is conducting with the opposition forces. We consider any refusal of dialogue to be irrational, harmful to the country, and bearing only threats to the welfare of the Venezuelan people. We always support legitimate authorities, and I think we have proved that we can jointly overcome any difficulties.
We support established cooperation in all areas. Last May, a meeting of the high-level commission of our countries was held, and many of the issues discussed at this commission were successfully resolved. We are talking about a number of areas: food, healthcare, energy, and many other areas. Therefore, today's meeting is very important. We can take stock of what has been done this year in order to see what problems we still have, what realities we are facing, how progress is being made in a number of areas, and make plans for the future. We always feel very comfortable in Moscow and are always happy to be here.
President Maduro sent a video message from Moscow's Red Square on Wednesday night.
Here we are, 3 degrees in Red Square, where it is now 10:15 at night. From here we send our greetings to all the people of Venezuela and to our brothers and sisters in Latin America and around the world, reasserting our belief that another world is possible, a world without empires, a world of fraternal relations. We have agreed with President Putin our strategic map of cooperation for the whole coming period, so that we can complete this year successfully and point towards 2020, 2021, 2022. I am leaving Moscow very pleased, because we have consolidated the path set by Commander Hugo Chavez, a path that will bear many fruits. Thank you to Russia, and thank you to President Putin. We will continue to overcome in the future.
While President Maduro was in Moscow, a group of Russian military technicians touched down in Caracas. Interfax reported that the team arrived in Venezuela to carry out maintenance on some of the equipment supplied as part of the military cooperation agreement between the two countries. A U.S.-Iran showdown marked the second day of the United Nations General Assembly meeting, with both countries putting forward divergent views on Middle East security. But Iranian officials say there's little to no chance that President Hassan Rouhani and his U.S. counterpart would meet on the sidelines of this event. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky delivered his first ever speech before the General Assembly, but made no mention of the impeachment inquiry which Trump faces over a phone call with him. And Iran's President Hassan Rouhani has warned world leaders that tensions are high in the Persian Gulf region and that a single blunder could fuel what he referred to as a big fire. Speaking at the 74th United Nations General Assembly, Rouhani also called out the U.S. for international piracy and merciless economic terrorism, referring to the increase in the U.S. sanctions.
Of my country maintaining security, peace, stability and progress in the Persian Gulf region and the Strait of Hormuz, I would like to invite all the countries directly affected by the developments in the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz to the Coalition for Hope, meaning Hormuz Peace Endeavor. Distinguished colleagues, our region is on the edge of collapse, as a single blunder can fuel a big fire. We shall not tolerate the provocative intervention of foreigners.
On the margins of the UN General Assembly, U.S. President Trump met with members of the Lima Group of Latin American countries to discuss their campaign against Venezuela. Venezuela's foreign minister gave Telesur his response to that meeting.
It's the puppeteer with the puppets, telling them what to do. And of course, they are all really frustrated because they have tried all year long to overthrow our government. It has been a continuous coup. They have sanctioned and they have imposed all this blockade against the Venezuelan people, and they haven't reached their goals. They haven't achieved their goals, and they won't. So it's really Trump trying to distract the public opinion of his own scandals, and it's about his political campaign as well. His face, the face of Trump, his was like disgusting. He didn't like to be there, no? Maybe because he doesn't like the Latin Americans. No? Su cara era de asco, no le gustaba estar en esa reunión. But, of course, he has to use Venezuela like Colombia uses Venezuela and other countries use Venezuela in order to distract the public opinion and not to concentrate in their own issues, in their own problems. So that's the real truth. And we hope that someday the United States, the elite that rules in the United States, learns to respect not only the Venezuelan people, but all the Latin American peoples, and we can have a relation of mutual respect and political tolerance and ideological tolerance. We hope if President Trump or his government wants to have dialogue with the Venezuelan government, our hands are opened and we can have dialogue. If they respect us, we will respect them. Thank you so much.
And now over to Venezuela, where on Tuesday, lawmakers of the United Socialist Party returned to the opposition-controlled National Assembly. It was part of the agreement which was signed last week with sectors of the opposition to unblock the political deadlock.
Revolutionary lawmakers arrive at the National Assembly in Caracas to retake their seats. They withdrew 2 years ago when the opposition majority defied the Supreme Court and decided to admit 3 of their candidates whose election had been marred by fraud. As a result, the court declared the assembly in breach of the Constitution. The session was a turning point. The Chavista members will try to help the assembly overcome its breach of the Constitution and recognize the other powers of state. This is part of the agreement signed last week with that part of the Venezuelan opposition which opposes military intervention, coups, and economic sanctions. All things that the parties backing the self-proclaimed president, Juan Guaidó, have supported.
We are making this political gesture to open up debate, to open up the way for dialogue and constitutional solutions for understanding, so that the different powers of the Republic can resume their proper roles. That is why we are here.
The aim is to break the political deadlock and restore the political institutions, according to the opposition members who signed the agreement.
This reincorporation certainly gives the Assembly an opportunity for dialogue, for debate between the different ideas. Each side can strongly defend its positions, but then we can take decisions for the good of Venezuela.
One of these decisions has to do with achieving the necessary quorum to elect new members of the National Electoral Council. Time is against them. Elections to the Assembly are due next year. However, the extremist opposition insists that President Nicolas Maduro should step down and there should be a presidential election, which is not in line with the Constitution.
We will work to make this body work and work well, to overcome this body's breach of the Constitution and to prepare for the parliamentary elections in 2020, when we will go out and campaign for the votes of our people.
But the opposition objected to the presence of Chavista lawmakers who accepted other government posts while they were away from the National Assembly.
If someone accepted another government post, they lost their seat.
Although it's true that the Constitution says you lose your seat if you accept another public position, it is this Assembly that decides on its members, and this Assembly is in breach. And the ruling on that breach says that all its decisions are illegal. The Constitution is clear that the final decisions on such matters rest with the Constitutional Chamber of the Supreme Court.
You are wrong, and those who took other posts are no longer members. That's final.
This assembly is in conflict with the other powers of state, and I ask the people of Venezuela who are accountable to, how can the country move forward when those who are meant to solve problems cannot agree to sit down and work within the framework which applies to everyone? which is the Constitution.
It will be the Constitutional Chamber that has to solve this dispute.
We are not going to get stuck in this debate. All of us here were elected by the Venezuelan people, and as elected lawmakers, there is nothing to negotiate.
The cards are now on the table, and Juan Guaido's term as President of the Assembly is also running out.
We'll take a short break now. Join us in a few.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Earth. Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. In Jamaica, heavy rainfall has resulted in landslides and flooding along roadways in the capital, Kingston, and in several other areas. There are also reports of water shortages in some affected communities. Cleanup activities are, however, currently underway. Flood-impacted roadways and block drains are being cleared in a number of parishes. Work is also taking place in the St. Thomas area, where the road is blocked by a massive landslide. The persistent rains have also delayed activities on key road projects island-wide. Tropical Storm Karen has drenched earthquake-shaken Puerto Rico, with torrential rains overnight before proceeding northward and growing stronger. The National Hurricane Center said heavy rains continue over Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and portions of the northern Leeward Islands. As a result, meanwhile, Hurricane Lorenzo continues to grow in strength and is expected to become a hurricane by Thursday. Jerry, on the other hand, has downgraded to a post-tropical cyclone as it moves towards Bermuda. Following increased geological activity over the weekend, citizens and foreigners are warned against visiting the mud volcano in Piparo, Trinidad and Tobago. The volcano is located in a central village in Trinidad. Residents have reported cracks on the roadway with damage caused to at least one house. The Ministry of National Security says it's working with key stakeholders to monitor the situation, while the police service has held a meeting in the village to roll out an evacuation plan with safety guidelines. The area has been cordoned off to prevent entry. Electoral observers and experts are beginning to arrive in Bolivia to accompany the elections set to take place on October 20th.
With 1 month to go, the first European Union electoral observation mission has arrived.
The mission will continue until the conclusion of the electoral process, and during its time here, specific reports will be made that will certainly be made public as they are completed.
The European Union mission plans to carry out one of the most thorough studies of the whole Bolivian electoral process, which includes an exhaustive survey of the opinion of different sectors.
We have begun an intense program which will include meetings with the main authorities, political leaders, and civil society representatives. So in the coming days, this long-term mission will follow the whole Bolivian electoral process very closely.
Meanwhile, the political opposition is trying to discredit the election process. They have already attempted, without success, to mobilize citizens to push Evo Morales to abandon his candidacy for re-election, and to get members of the Electoral Court to resign.
Beyond the current elections, I think they are going to try to undermine the process and take a position like that of the civic committees, and claim to be defending democracy, whatever people decide at the polls.
With less than 1 month before people go to vote, the opposition is spreading doubts about the election and insisting that there will be fraud, fears which could be countered by these international observers.
Bolivia has a system which is based on electoral boards, and observers from each party are able to see all the voting records as soon as the polls close, so that they can check the validity of the results. This is what the international observers have to oversee, and that's why they are here.
This will be the first election in which the electoral register is audited by the Organization of American States, one of the demands of the opposition. The latest opinion polls indicate that Evo Morales will take first place and be re-elected in the first round if he maintains his current lead of more than 10 points over the former president, Carlos Mesa, who is in second place.
In Algeria, the brother of former President Abdelaziz Bouteflika has been sentenced to 15 years in prison for conspiring against the state and undermining the military. Said Bouteflika and 2 other officials allegedly planned to declare a state of emergency and fire the army chief, as protests against the president were mounting in April. Said was widely seen as the real power behind the presidency after his older brother suffered a stroke in 2013. President Bouteflika was ousted from power in April following protests calling for his resignation. Nigeria's army has closed 4 offices of international aid group Mercy Corps in the northeastern region of the country. Later, Mercy Corps announced it's suspending its operations in the states of Borno and Yobe. According to the Army's action, the military reportedly closed the offices after finding almost $10,000 in cash being transported in Borno State by a driver who said the money belonged to Mercy Corps. Northeast Nigeria has been the region worst hit by militant group Boko Haram, which has killed at least 30,000 people and forced 2 million to flee their homes over the last decade. Police in Eswatini have violently crushed demonstrations by civil servants who had taken to the streets to protest against low salaries. Police officers used tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse the civil servants who planned to march to the finance minister's office to demand a 7% pay raise. They say that the current wages are not enough for them to meet their basic needs amid the rising cost of living. South Africa is still grappling with the ripples of colonialism and apartheid. The apartheid government sponsored traditional leadership to keep the black population within the confines of homelands. But 25 years into democracy, there are questions raised on traditional leadership in a democratic South Africa.
Before 1994, black South Africans were forced by the white supremacist government laws to live with people of the same skin color, language and ethnicity. The apartheid government gave legitimacy to homelands for black people and gave each one a leader that would make sure black people did not mix with whites. Fast forward to 2019, the question asked is, what is the point of government funding traditional leaders in a democracy?
It sounds a bit cynical from my side, but I think government for many years, and all the main parties, not only the ANC, the IFP, Inkatha Freedom Party is another good example of that. They know the cultural importance and traditional importance of traditional leaders, and that in many societies, they are the key to those persons, whether it is about how they are going to vote, what they are doing in all respects, whether they support government or not. So if you can have the sympathy, the cooperation of the traditional leaders on your side, you are safe.
The role of traditional leaders remains ambiguous. While government recognizes the authority, they don't have any executive power.
So they are not involved, as they are not part of parliament, or they are not part of the executive. But we are also not always sure exactly what are the status of their powers. There's now, for example, legislation in the pipeline about the traditional courts, versus obviously the more secular, the more modernist courts, if we can call that. And there's this, in a sense, uncertainty about how these different types of courts are going to work side by side.
Another issue that sparked debate is the government's funding of traditional leaders and their families. South Africa's largest tribe, the Zulu Nation, have a king that gets the biggest cut of funding for traditional leaders. Opposition parties questioned why King Goodwill Zwelithini gets an equivalent of $5 million per year. At the same time, government is yet to resolve grievance by the Aboriginal people of South Africa. South Africa has one of the most progressive constitutions in the world. While it seeks to protect the marginalized, will it protect traditional leaders who are associated with creating a patriarchal society? Matuba Mahlachi for Telesur in Pretoria, South Africa.
We'll take a short break now. Don't go away.
Who's moving the chessmen? What interests motivate the actors behind each event?
Se despliega el tablero.
On Critical Moves, investigates every event from Monday to Friday. Only on Telesur.
Welcome back. The government of Kenya has highlighted its significant achievements over the past few years towards sustainable development. Addressing the United Nations General Assembly in New York, Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta said his country has improved access to health, managed to reduce the cost of medicines, and increase the number of people with health insurance. He also highlighted the significant investment his country has put into the renewable energy sector.
Kenya has embarked on programs for sustainable, proactive climate action. We have banned the use of single-use plastics and intensified our national tree planting campaigns in order to restore our water catchment areas. We target to increase our forest cover from the current 77% to 15% by 2022. We are focused on development of clean energy. Today, Kenya is among the top 10 global producers of geothermal electricity.
Science and knowledge are the main resources used by the Syrian people to overcome the economic war being waged on the country. University students are at the forefront of these efforts to overcome the difficulties facing everyday citizens.
This is the second expo of graduation projects for final year students, specializing in mechanical and electrical engineering at the University of Damascus. Here, ideas for reconstruction of their homeland thrive.
We are here to tell the entire world that this unjust blockade that is making us go through very rough circumstances. But they haven't been able to block our minds, and we continue looking for ways to move forward with our development.
Our students' contributions are very important for the reconstruction of Syria. That's why we organize this expo, to showcase their best ideas and then help them through state and private institutions to develop their projects into useful products for society.
Engineering students refuse to do nothing under such difficult circumstances. Their ideas are a great help to reconstruction efforts, especially in the worst hit areas after 9 years of war.
My sister was hit by the sharp nail in her spine, and due to the economic blockade, I was unable to buy the prosthesis she needed. After that, I designed a similar prosthesis that can be manufactured here and be sold at an accessible price.
Our power grid has been greatly damaged due to the war, so as renewable energy engineers, we have given ourselves the task of finding alternative power sources. From there, we came up with a number of ideas to provide low-cost energy for street lamps.
This expo is showcasing 80 projects that want to help society and promote productive development. It stands as a space where Syrians can make their best efforts to help in the reconstruction of their homeland.
We've reached the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telestarenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telestar English, I'm Camila Escalante. Thanks for watching.